And we're live. Live. All right, welcome everyone to this year's first Spec 3.0 meeting. Hope you all had a lovely New Year and Christmas for that matter. So before getting into it, is there anyone that want to add something to the agenda before diving into it, or want to introduce themselves or something similar?
I do. I added something to the agenda, by the way, on the issues. Not to the agenda, but as a comment. I don't know if you saw it.
Yes,
So, yeah.
I added it. I added
Okay.
it to the agenda.
Perfect. Thanks.
Does anyone have anything else? No? All right. So let's just jump straight into it, I guess. So before the holidays, right before the holidays, I think it was the meeting before it was last meeting. We talked about that it was time to set an actual release date and the rest of the process to that. I then created an issue to discuss the specific workflow and the specific process to take. And the suggestion is that from February, end of February, we don't include any more features, new features in Spec 3.0. And from that date, like the end of February, the only thing that can change are review of and minor edits of already existing changes, and then finalizing all of the tools to get them up to date with Spec 3.0. So when we release in June, all of the tools are already ready to accommodate the new version. And of course, we can still remove existing features or reject them from the spec in case that happens. Don't think it will, but at least that's still the option. Up until now, there haven't been any rejections or problems or comments where it shouldn't happen, that we shouldn't go with this approach. But just for the sake of it, if anybody have anything they want to add to the discussion here, I think we can bring it up. No?
Is there any concept of an end of life for the sort of the 2.x version of the spec? I mean, I guess we're going to stop adding new features to it, so that's kind of implicit, but yeah, I'm just wondering, is that part of the schedule, that the idea of winding down changes to 2.x, or maybe that just we keep it just by virtue of not adding new features, it kind of implicitly becomes deprecated?
We don't have, and it haven't been brought up yet, and I don't think we have any issue for it either. So there's no protocol yet of what to happen there.
Yeah, I will just continue with the trend that we've been doing, right? So if we are in version 2, we don't maintain version 1 anymore, and if we're in version 3, we don't maintain version 2 anymore, right? So unless, I mean, we're not maintaining a software, so I was thinking on security issues and all this stuff, but yeah, what security issue we might have, right, on a markdown file. So so yeah, I don't have any I don't know, I cannot come up with any reason why we will maintain version 2 for longer time, instead of, you know, motivating people to migrate to version 3. So the idea is that yeah, we're gonna have version 2 and version 3 living together for a while. So, and that's okay. That's completely fine. Not everybody has to migrate, but yeah, like if we want to move forward, I think we should be stopping developing or improving version 2, right? Otherwise, we'll end up with two spec, basically, especially regarding this public subscribe stuff. Will make things more complicated. That doesn't mean that people should stop using it and that our software will not understand it. For sure, we should still give support to version 2 on all our software for, I don't know, years, most probably. So yeah, and then at some point we just think the issue will arise when it's the right time. Then someone will probably complain like, do we have to support this anymore on the parser and all the tools? And then it will stop being supported at some point. But yeah, like I said, I think it will be in years, or it should be. I think so. We give time to people to properly migrate. So yeah.
Agreed. Was there anything specific you wanted to bring up,
No,
Dale?
no, I was thinking out loud.
Nice pun. All right, so taking this further, should we set a specific date where this is accepted as like this is what we do, or like give people another week, or but there are only 6 weeks left until no further changes can happen, so it's kind of like, yeah, not sure how to proceed there.
What do you mean?
When do we say that this is the approach we take?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, yeah, we should give priority to this issue, right? I mean, we the maintainers should be giving priority to this issue, so we decide as soon as possible, because it's January, it's past mid-January now, so
Yes,
so
it's
yeah.
only 6 more weeks until freeze period, if we
Yeah,
use this.
I know. Don't stress me more. So yeah, actually, I'm giving priority to everything related to the spec. So yeah, so that we can have it ready for next month. I guess it's an issue, but yeah, it's we should just we should just give it priority. Can you share a link to the issue, please? Or
Yes.
no, now that you have it ready there. I'm just being lazy here.
I think it would make sense to set a specific date, that unless anything specifically is stated that this shouldn't happen, we just accept it from Friday or next week.
I'm gonna just ping maintainers one by one. Let's take advantage that we are only a few, right? So we can do it manually. I'm gonna make sure that I ping everyone manually, and to ask them to leave a comment there, and replying to with what it should be done.
All right.
Remember that the idea is is that we release in June. So if we postpone this to March, for instance, instead of February, this means that we give less time to software and people to actually and everyone to actually try it and test the spec. Yes. Or we move it to September, but releasing in September sounds like a suicide here, right after the summer, right? Yes. So yeah, I think it has to be February, but yeah, that's my opinion.
I also talked with Lucas about from end of February, or when the freeze period kind of starts. I think these meetings are going to change a bit to include, or maybe we start a new meeting, that depends. But then we can use these meetings as kind of office hours. So if you want help supporting version 3. If you have a product, if you have a library, not sure how to do it, or something is not clear, you can, for example, participate in these meetings and get the help to migrate or to support the new version and ask questions there. Yeah, that was at least the idea. Especially since there's probably not much we need to discuss related to the spec itself, unless it's very specific for one specific issue. But yeah, we can bring that up later as well. Anyone has anything for this specific item before we move on? All right. Fran, do you want to bring up yours now?
Yeah, I was leaving a comment there. Well, actually, I wanted to discuss this with Lucas as well, because it was all triggered by a comment from Lucas, actually, but he's not here. So yeah. But anyway, let's discuss it, because I want to know your opinion here. So, because I'm also not clear on what to do here. So he's got a great point, even though he's always wrong. But don't tell him. Don't tell him that he's right. So this issue here is about separating servers. Right now we have servers as like this. We have a WebSocket server, a Kafka server, a Kafka broker server, right? And so on and so on. And so just a little bit of context. The spec is about defining the application, right? So far, this is what we have. Spec defines a specific application. And so servers there are right now a mix of the servers that you can connect to, like the Kafka broker. So your application might connect to a Kafka broker, or it can be a WebSocket server, for instance, that you're not connecting to. You're actually the server. Your application is the server, right? So that's a weird mix, right? That's a weird mix. In the beginning, we always defaulted to, like, if it's HTTP and WebSocket, then we assume that the application is a server, and if not, then the application is just a client connecting to a broker or another server, right? But the more we develop tools, especially Glee, for instance, in this case, that's why it came to my table, is that I may want to build a client that connects to a WebSocket server or to an HTTP server, right? So I may not be the server myself, I may be the client. So, and I still want to list it there, that I'm gonna connect this WebSocket endpoint somewhere. So if I put the server there, we need to make a differentiation. Is that if we add the server to the list of server and it says WebSocket blah blah blah, we need to make a differentiation there. Like, is it that I am the server, or is it that I am the client who's connected to that server, right? Is that everyone following so far? So that is more or less the context, right? So in this pull request, what I'm proposing is that we separate servers. Basically, we split it in two, right? So we split it into provided servers and used servers, right? So if my application is providing a server, like I am providing a WebSocket server or an HTTP server, then I put it into the provided servers. But if I'm using it, if I am a client, right, then I put it into the used servers. But that is So Jonas, what are you saying? Maybe endpoint and server make more sense than use server and private servers respectively.
I just wanted to use chat to keep that in mind until you ask for questions, and then I can answer.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Let's interrupt me whenever needed. Don't wait
Alright.
for
Yeah, it was just provided servers and use servers, like that keyword.
Yeah.
Is weird to me. Like it's like I understand the concept behind it. I just don't like the keyword itself.
Okay, you mean the name of the?
Yes.
Well, then wait until I explain to you why endpoint is even a worse idea.
Perfect.
Because endpoint is a way more overloaded term, right? So you gotta really be careful with endpoint. But yeah, that's kidding. That's also, I think that wasn't a discussion, and I'm not sure if it was with Jason actually. So yeah, one of the ideas was that we still keep servers as it is, and then we add two optional ones where we reference them and say like, this is provided, this is used, blah blah blah, right? So that is oh yeah, yeah. The thing is that this got a little bit more complicated because since version 3, we are talking about a different kind of async API file. So we're talking about a file, an async API file that doesn't define an application, that actually defines a set of resources, set of channels, messages, or without operations, without publish, subscribe, or send or receive, or anything like that. And actually, that was triggered after my conversation with my Thinking Out Loud episode with Dale, right? I think it was one of the first ones. And that they were using async API, they were hacking async API, right? To define all the channels and all the messages in this channel. And I think they were using always subscribe or publish or whatever. It doesn't matter because yeah, it was just as a way to list all the channels, all the topics, and all the messages inside. But the operation wasn't important because they were not interested in that. They just wanted to define a menu of channels and messages and all this stuff, right? So we're starting to talk about this kind of new kind of document, right? So in the new kind of document where it's not representing an application, then provided servers and used servers don't make sense anymore, right? Because who's using that servers or who's providing these servers? There's no application, it's just a menu of things. So in that case, what I'm proposing is, or what I'm suggesting that we can do here is, we need to identify the kind of document, right? The kind of document might be an application, or it might be something else, a domain, whatever. Domain might be a menu of things. Collection, like I said here, it can be a collection, a menu, a library, whatever name you want to come up with. And then in the case of the application document, provided servers and used servers make sense. There's no servers property, plain servers property. But in the case of domain, there will be servers, but there will not be provided servers and used servers. So, so that is like, when I saw this, it was like, we got a problem here. Because all of a sudden we're introducing a new field here called kind, just to differentiate the kind of async API file we're talking about, which might make sense. I'm not saying it doesn't, but yeah, it adds more complexity. And another thing is that we split the async API object, the root object of async API, into two different ones, right? So into application or domain object, which is a little bit more complicated, or let's say ugly, if you want. Thing is that just because of this, just because we're referencing servers here, but we don't know what are we doing with these servers, right? All of a sudden, and because of this, and because we have a new kind of file, which is the menu, right? And the menu was agreed in previous pull requests that it will be triggered. You know, the menu behavior will be triggered if there are no operations. So if there's no operations, it will be considered just a collection, a menu of things, right? So in such a case, just because we have this thing with the servers and this other thing about having and not having operations, being a menu or not being a menu, being an application, not being an application, we find this conflict. You know, like, what do we do? Like, if we forget about provided servers and use servers, then we still have a problem. We still have the problem that I said before. Am I connecting to a WebSocket endpoint or WebSocket server, or am I the WebSocket server? But this is still unsolved. If we try to solve it like this, for instance, somehow like this, we still have the problem that these two properties should not be allowed if there are no operations, right?
How many protocols require you to know whether it's like a remote provided server versus something that you provide?
I mean, in theory, anyone. In practice, it's HTTP and WebSocket, right? How many people actually? I mean, you can write a Kafka server yourself if you want, but why will you do that, right? Like, you will use a broker, right? Kafka broker. But HTTP and WebSocket, it's pretty common. It's like you write your own server, right? It's actually the usual thing, right? You write your server.
Have you tried using, just a question to have you tried using the bindings to specify whether it's a provided or used server?
Yes, that was investigated in a previous conversation. I don't know if it was an issue here. Remote and local servers. Well, somewhere I'll explain what happened. So we explored something similar, and it's that I proposed at some point that we annotate the server with a kind. Actually, it was, and now I remind. Well, actually, right, because Sergio took the time to extract it. This is, yeah, introduce a new kind property on the server object. So we could use something like this: kind local, kind remote, or whatever names that you want to come up with, right? So this is that you are providing the server. This is that you are connecting to a remote server, right? So problem with this is that this makes the server object impossible to reuse, right? So if I extract this server definition to a separate file and I have two applications pointing to the test server, one will be the server, but the other one will be the client. And the client is seeing that this is local, that this should be, that the client should be providing the server, which is not correct, right? So,
right.
And the reason is that the property of a server being local or remote is not a property of the server itself. It's a property of the relationship between the application and the server. You know, so it's a trait of the relationship in between the two, right? So it's what am I, the application? What is the application? what is the application to the server, right? Or what is the server to this application? Is this am I the server and the application at the same time, or is it just two different things that are connected, right? So this trade is a trade, not trade as in isn't KPI trades. You know, this feature, trait, whatever, characteristic. This characteristic is a thing of the relationship. It's not a thing of the server, or it's not a thing of the application. You know, so
Right. Okay. So the main reason why you want to have these two root server keywords is because you want to have reusability between them instead of
Yeah.
having that specific
Yeah,
same that we have the same problem we have at operations, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So the
okay.
thing is that if we put it like this, you cannot reuse this server, this whole server definition, right? Because the server, yeah, cool, server will be fine, it's local, but the client will be seeing local, and that's not correct. So, and you cannot override it. If we could do this $ref and then along the $ref, put some more properties to override the kind property, then it would be easy to solve because we could override this thing, right? But we can't, so, or we shouldn't, right? So yeah. My other proposal at the time was that we split the current servers into remotes and servers, right? So we have servers and remotes. Both of them are the same thing. This is a server and this is a server, but these ones are understood as remote servers, right? It's in the end, it's the same as used servers and provided servers. It's the same thing. It's just that in my proposal before, what I'm doing is I'm leaving servers untouched, and I'm just adding two more lists, right? Two more properties that you can add to specify if one server is remote, is a used server, but if it's a provided server, if it's local, right? But it's the same concept in the end. It's just trying to play with it in different ways. Again, another, I don't know if I said this at some point somewhere, but I don't remember where. One thing that we can do is that we can default servers to be remote servers, used servers, right? Like a broker. And we only add this one, provided servers, right? So that you specify like this is the default. So if you're using brokers, you don't have to add this one. But if you are using WebSockets or you are a WebSocket server or you are an HTTP server, then you should add this one to mark this server as it's me implementing this server, right? It's not something remote, right? But yeah, so that is it so far. Any questions so far?
And the reason you want to keep the servers keyword is because you want, for example, channels to be able to reference just one specific server definition, right?
Yeah, and actually just to make it less problematic, let's say. In the other approach where I have servers and remotes, it's the same thing. Here I'm just defaulting to the opposite. So defaulting that servers are actual servers, that you are creating a server, you're exposing a server yourself, and remotes are that you are the client of that server. So yeah.
Have there been any discussions regarding adding a trait for servers instead of having this?
No, it hasn't been.
Because that would solve your reference problem for reusability, where you can still specifically provide the kind of operation keyword and still reference it accordingly.
How will you solve that? I'm not sure.
Because then your server traits definition would that contains all the information, the URL, whatever, security, whatnot. And then you can still have let's just say we use kind, for example, local or remote. Then you can still from across two async API files, you can still reference one that's a remote WebSocket server and one that's a local WebSocket server. And you
But
can
how-
still share
but-
the information across them, right?
But where do you apply the trade? Like if I have a $ref here in another file, not in this file. If in another file I have
No, the
$ref here.
trade is a $ref. So you would still have your server object there.
Yeah. Okay, and then I can apply a trade to override something on the object.
Yes.
That's what you mean.
Yes.
Well, that is a cool. Yeah, that is an elegant solution. Yeah. I like it.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Are we applying
Yeah.
the kind to the operation?
Yeah, so that will be, yeah, let me just type an example maybe. I think it's going to be easier. Well, yeah, I can just keep this one. So for instance, I can have something like this that is kind local, right? And well, in this case, say for instance that this is a WebSocket server, right? And blah, 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 whatever. Right, so thing is that we have a WebSocket server here, and for this application that we're defining, this is local. But in another file, what we can do is that, or what Jonas is proposing is that we add traits here. So we also have a traits property like we have in other parts of the spec. And so we can just have something like this, and it will be something like this, right?
No,
So,
not kind. But the protocol and the URL are part of the traits, and the kind are explicitly there.
You mean the opposite? Why?
Yes.
Well, will you do it reversed?
Because it's the kind property that are explicit for this specific application that is either remote or a local one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You would want to have the kind be located on the operation, because the operation can interact with a server in either a remote or a local kind of way. So exactly in the situation that you were talking about, to make servers reusable, if you had like a sort of a directory of servers, you could have some operations interacting with in a remote way, and some interacting with it in a local way. So you would want to label that method of that type of operation on the operation itself, and then make a reference over to a generic server object.
So what you mean is that we put everything here, something like this, right?
And that's your reference.
Then my question will be, wouldn't it be better if we just have something like, you see servers, we can have local and remote, and then inside here, I will just define the whole thing, right? Wait a second.
Yeah, but I think then, I mean, we talk.
It's a reusability that kind of needs to be solved, right? Because between local and remote, you still have the same URL, you still have the same protocol, you still have the same security, but and I mean, to me, it doesn't matter whether it's A or B here, but you still want to reference those common information for the server, because you don't want to duplicate that information, right?
But you're not duplicating. Like, remember that you are in some other document. Say this is another document, right? So here, what I will do is I will point to this somewhere, not this, this doc. Okay. Servers and it will be local because I know it's local there, right?
Yep.
Local. Well, actually, I'm missing this. Yeah, I'm missing the ID of the server, of course. Right, and that's what we'll have here. So my application will know that it's remote because it's under remote. My application will know the whole definition of the server because I'm pointing to it, and there is no kind or anything here, which effectively translates to what I was trying to achieve by removing servers and just have servers and remotes.
Yeah.
That's why I did it.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I did that. So that we don't have to, because the thing is that if we do it this way, then I mean it's weird because we would have to make trades property mandatory, right? Otherwise, you can have a server like this.
No, I mean it's up to you whether you want reusability. I mean, you can duplicate the data all you want. It's the same with reference here in the remote and local. You can decide to use it or you cannot, like using reference there. It's up to you.
But then you mean that I can have the URL here as well?
I mean, it's up to you. It's the same with traits that we have in channels and operations and messages.
Okay.
But if you want reusability, you can use traits and a reference that are linked or specifically specified in components.
And then I'm curious why not like this? Why not like I just specify everything here and I just make it like kind local, right? Well, yeah, same thing because yeah, it will all come with it will all come with a $ref. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're coming in, if you have a directory of servers, so to me, it makes a lot more sense to have the kind attached to the operation, since that's how things will come in, and then you $ref over to the server, but you specify how this particular operation, like if it's a publish operation, then of kind remote, and then you $ref over to the server that could potentially be in a directory, and that way you have server reuse.
But if we do it like this, then every single operation will need to have this specific property, right? Like marking it as.
Well, in the same way, yeah, I mean, you can make it optional. In the same way, like you say, really this kind property is only applicable for web services and web sockets or HTTP. So you can make the default, have it be a remote. And if people really need this functionality for WebSockets, then have them specify,
But what I mean by every single operation is that imagine that I'm documenting my WebSocket API. I am the server, and we're defaulting that everything is remote. Then all my operations in my file will need to have the kind attribute.
Can someone explain to me why we're talking about operations?
Well, I guess because that's the whether something is local or remote is relative to an operation, right? Like a single server from one perspective is local, but it's also remote to a client that's connecting to that same server. So if you want to have the that one server be reusable for both clients and for the application itself, in case let's just say it's a WebSocket server, you can't have the server have the kind defined on the server itself, because that's not reusable, right? Because depending on your perspective, the server is both a local or a remote server. The only way the way that it's differentiated is how one particular operation interacts with that server. So it makes sense to put the kind on the operation, not the server itself.
I agree with most of it, but what I don't agree with is that it's something about the operation. It's not about the operation. It's about the application. It's a relationship between the application and the server. So is the server the same as the application, or is it something remote. Something, it's not about a specific operation, right? It is not
I mean-
about sending a message or receiving a message. It's more about like, where is the server to me? I am the application, right? So where is the server to me? Is the server with me, or I am the application, or is the server somewhere else, right? And then if we
Right, but that,
define
I
it,
mean, if that happens, if you define the server within applications async API, but then because we have this directory concept that's coming in V3,
yeah,
you're abstracted away, like your application doesn't define the server. The server is sort of free floating. So
right,
you have to,
right. So that's why I wanted to separate it into this. Where is it? Not this one. I think it was here. So that's why I wanted to separate it, not with kind, but to split it into two different properties, right? So, because if you split it like this, then this can be a $ref to this other kind of document, this directory document, where you have the server defined. The server definition doesn't contain any information if it's local, remote, or anything, because it's not something, it's not the property of the server. So, but this will be implicitly defined, right? Or we can rename this to locals or whatever, whatever other name, right? But this will be local servers and this will be remote servers. So here, effectively, in my application async KPI file, what I'm doing is all the local servers are this, all the remote servers are this, right? They're all servers.
yeah. I mean, do you think that I mean, that's a pretty wholesale change, right? Because if you're saying that brokers are, I mean, I don't even know, 70% of things, now you're going to have to explain to people, a lot of people, the difference between servers and remotes. I don't know if that's necessarily.
Well, that's why I wanted to introduce the other concept, right? So it's like servers is just servers. There's no differentiation, right? And then we do it the opposite way. So we only do it for provided servers, right? Or we can get rid of this, right? But we can use this. So only for those who are providing servers, namely HTTP WebSocket servers.
Right.
So they will have to do it. For the rest of the people, it will just be as easy as removing this and just leave the servers here, right? As it is right now, right? So that will make broker people happy.
Well, yeah.
But the reality is that so I know that this is async KPI, right? And most of the things here are are broker stuff, broker related stuff. But
No,
I'm
I'm
thinking,
with you, man. We have to think of everybody.
I'm thinking about the roadmap, right? So it's about any kind of APIs, right? So if we ever get into REST, or not even REST, WebSocket as well, right? But if we ever get into the standard to define REST APIs, right? If we become the default, let's say, then the majority will be REST, will not be brokers.
Right.
That's the
Right.
thing. So even though I'm sad to say this, because I would love more people to be doing asynchronous stuff and not REST stuff, but that's the reality. I mean, that could be the reality. The reality is that right now, the default should be to make it easy for broker people, let's say, because the majority will be for brokers. But yeah, and in this case, brokers will be always remotes or youth servers or whatever, right? So yeah, actually, this suggestion of using provided servers and youth servers is coming from this issue, I think. Let me find it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, man. I think I just need to think about it a little bit more. I mean, clearly, like the less. I'm just thinking about the education process for people. How would I explain the difference between a provided server and a used server, and what the case which. Maybe it's just a new concept to me, and I'm not fully
Yeah.
rocking exactly how I would do that. So I guess maybe I'll be quiet and
in
let
your case, Jesse, you will have to do nothing because
yeah.
99%
Well, that's
of your
certainly
users,
appealing because I love doing nothing. So that's great.
because 99% of your users and your customers are will not ever have to write anything with this. Just
Right. But I
stick
mean, I
with
still care about the
the
spec
default.
as a whole. So I guess
Yeah, so-
I'll think about it more and maybe I'll comment in GitHub.
Okay. So yeah, so give it a thought. Also, I don't want to forget that there is a comment from a long comment from Lucas, splitting all his thoughts into this, and the conclusion, right? Let me just.
That's a lot of text.
Well, yeah. So the thing is that another proposal was that we create another spec. So we create another spec just for the catalog or the directory kind of documents. So it's a separate spec and we maintain it separately. Most of it will be common, right? But it's a separate spec. So then it's easy because, yeah, it's a different thing, right? But we don't need that, of course. And we're not gonna. I don't think we should be doing that now. But that's another option. And so Lucas is saying that we should probably be saying that async KPI is for API interface, right? We should not be saying that async KPI is to define applications, or to define a directory of things. But it's just it's actually, if I understand correctly, that's why I wanted to have Lucas here, but yeah, he cannot join. So, but the idea, if I understood correctly, is that we don't make this decision at all. Like, and async KPI document is just some stuff defined there. Like, can be for application, can be a directory. We don't define that. We don't mention application or anything in any place of the spec. We just leave it to the human using the document to know what kind of document it is, what kind of thing it is defining, right? So he argues that it's always, so for instance, like I really do not understand why we need a property to say kind domain or kind catalog or kind directory or whatever, no matter wording or location. Why tools need to behave differently depending on what flag was provided. In the end, it is human that choose a tool and uses it, right? So async KPI document maintainer know what interface they're documenting, so they know that they should not use it as a collection or as a domain. We should just explain that separate async KPI documents will be created with proper title and description. Async KPI document users know from the title and description what document is it and what is its purpose. No flag needed. And in the case of Glee, for instance, if I have Glee and it's capable of being either client or server, then I do not think it should be on spec level what it is told if async KPI document is for client or server. It should be a conscious decision of the user maintainer to provide proper flags to the tool to get desired result. So you define everything, but we don't say if it's for application or if it's a collection of stuff or what is it. We don't say that. It's just an interface, right? And then, for instance, on my framework, I just say like use this async KPI file, and I have also to say like, but use it as an application definition, right? So that everything's clear there, or use it as or use it as a collection of things, right? So if you try to, for instance, use the document as a collection of things, and if you have a tool that allows you to use the document as a collection of things, as a domain or whatever you want to call it, then if it finds that there are operations, it will simply ignore it. It doesn't fail, it just ignores it, right? because this tool is not meant for, it's not meant to interpret operations. And if you are trying to create an application and there are no operations, then your applications will complain that you don't have any operations defined, right? That, yeah, you're trying to build a client or a server or whatever, and but you have no operations. So how am I supposed to implement anything, right? So yeah, like up to the tool. It's another way. It's we delegate this responsibility to the tool, to the user using the tool, right? We keep the document the same for everything. It doesn't have any specific meaning. It's not for application or it's not for collection of things. My only concern about this is that we should probably not be saying API or interface, because we had this discussion recently on Slack. What most people understand by documenting or defining the interface is precisely the opposite. It's precisely what we have right now on SNTPA 2. It is what others can do with me. So I will be careful with this, with using the API and interface words. So I understand that it's still interface, but yeah, not as seen as we usually see it. So yeah, so we can be more specific or we can be more flexible there, and we don't define that, and it's up to the user to interpret it the way they want. The document is just there. It's a loose definition. Thoughts about it?
Sounds like I agree with Lucas, so I have to read his comment, I guess.
It sounds that I agree as well, but and that will facilitate things a lot on our side, maintaining the spec. But I'm fearing, I'm fearful that we are leaving things undefined and uncovered, and that more improper uses of the spec will appear. Improper as in like improper ways of understanding the spec, and that we end up with different tools interpreting it differently, and then these tools cannot really communicate with each other because they understand the spec differently, because it's loose on that side. So pros and cons, I guess, but I mean, I don't have a specific case. It's just fear. It's just a fear that we might, because we're not specifying it, we might leave the door open to different interpretations of the spec. Right. So specifically, if we don't clarify what do we mean by interface specifically.
Right. I mean, that specific, like API and interface probably have to be explicitly stated in the spec from version 3 with a specific explanation of what it means in this version.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very different from what you might be used to.
Yeah.
But I think that's an education problem, not a.
Well, I mean, publish subscribe was an education problem.
Yes, and we haven't done well educated about that.
It's complex. It's complicated. People don't read, including myself.
Yes.
People don't read. I mean, you usually
not until you have to.
Not until you have to. But you probably complain before reading. So, yes. Or just throw it like, this is shit and this doesn't work, before actually reading. So and before actually asking. So yeah, like there's this pros and cons. Like we need to, I mean, if you read interface, it's because you're reading the spec. So actually, this is not really a problem. if you read the word interface or API in the spec being defined, then it's not a problem because it means that you are reading the spec. So the problem is when you don't read it. But yeah, but when you don't read it, then the problem is that you might understand well, you have this problem anywhere. Even if we make it explicit that it's for application or this is for blah blah blah. If you don't read the spec, then yeah, of course you can do whatever with the spec with the spec. Yeah. So yeah.
Yep.
Pros and cons. And yeah, and in the case of we define the interface, then yeah, probably provided servers and used servers don't make sense anymore. So there's, for instance, if I'm using my framework, yeah, I will have to go to the config file of my framework and say implement this server or use this server, right? So it's not
That
in
or
spec.
extension.
That or extension, exactly. But yeah, what we're saying that we don't put it on the spec, right? It's because if we can put it as an extension, then why don't we put it as part of the spec, right?
Because if it can't live as an extension, it can't live as in the spec, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's everything can live as an extension to it. We just have async API 3 and the rest is just an extension.
Yes.
But yeah, like, I don't know. Yeah, it can be an extension, can be a configuration on your tool, can be, I'm thinking now, like, for instance, if we use the generator to generate documentation, that will probably have to be a parameter that you can pass.
Yeah.
You will have to specify that these servers are local servers or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
All right, 3 more minutes. Any last remark for that issue?
Insert the link. Please leave your ideas there. Even if you feel that, like, oh, these guys seem to know what they're doing, and who am I to leave a comment there? Well, first of all, we don't know what we're doing. We're just trying to do our best, and yeah, so we welcome everyone to leave a comment there. So yeah, for real. Actually, I changed from servers and remotes to provided servers and used servers because someone in the issue, in one of the related issues, proposed that. And I was like, oh, maybe that's more specific. That's more, like you're being more explicit than just servers and remotes. Right? So yeah.
All right.
In the end, names will not matter once we have Studio allowing you to create XMPP files without touching a single line of code.
It still matter, especially if you don't use Studio, right?
But it will only matter to those who want to write the spec manually, which I'm assuming here that they will be reading the spec.
Yeah. Then we're back to it that they will read the spec whenever they reach that point where they have to learn about used and remote servers.
No, they don't have to. They can use the UI to do it properly, to do it without having to learn anything. Only those who really want to type it will have to learn it. And it's up to you. You have tools. If you don't use them, it's up to you.
All right. That's the final word, I guess. So I'll make a new issue for in 2 weeks again. I think,
Mhm.
unless we want to start increasing but I haven't heard any request for that, like increasing the frequency of the meeting. So let's just keep it in 2 weeks, and I guess I'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye bye.